Hello and welcome back to episode 36 of the Boxing Social podcast in association with Betfred, with me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. As always, before we get started, just like to remind everybody, please, to like, comment, subscribe, turn those notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, I have an esteemed panel of guests this week. Started with former WBA lightweight champion of the world, Mr. Anthony Crolla, gun for hire, Declan Taylor. Anybody who's got any work, please leave it in the comments for Mr. Man over here. And Andy Clarke, the voice of Wasserman Boxing Development Series, live and exclusive in the UK and Ireland on Boxing Social. Anyway, guys, how are we doing? Been a busy weekend of boxing. Crolla, nice to have you here. The first time we've had you here.
Mate, good to be here with you boys. Yes, good to be here. But like you just said then, a mad weekend of boxing. Friday night, there's a few shows going on. I think there was three, wasn't there? The Wasserman one, the Zone show over in Madrid. Was it Madrid?
The Zone was Bilbao.
No, Bilbao, of course it was.
Herman
Bilbao with Kerman and Flatley, and then MTK show at York Hall, yeah.
Busy old week. Have you ever introduced one of these shows and not used the word esteemed panel of guests? Because I'm wondering,
whenever Barry
it's not
Jones
sincere.
Yeah,
if you say it for everyone,
point, to be fair, yeah.
It's power up.
Yeah, okay. What word would you like me to use?
Just think of a different one rather than just using esteemed every time.
Okay,
I was happy with esteemed.
Yeah, but then I know that he says it every time, so it doesn't count.
Well, it's nice to be polite because you don't want to. If I use it,
then
I don't
this
say
is a rubbish one this week.
Yeah, exactly. Well, sorry guys, I couldn't really. I had to get Deck Taylor in.
Yeah.
But anyway, Andy, nice to see you. Did you enjoy the weekend of boxing?
I did, yeah, I did. I was at the Copper Box for Talk Sport, so that was a good card all the way through. Really, I thought Sokolowski was a good fight. Not really an upset, I didn't think. I thought that Sokolowski was favourite heading into that fight. I enjoyed watching Itauma, although his guy didn't last very long. I liked Dennis McCann, so it was good to see him. And then the two fights at the top were great. You know, real controversy with Hamzah Sheeraz against Bradley Skeete. I'm sure we'll get onto that. He should have been disqualified, I think, Hamzah Sheeraz. I think most people would agree with that. At the time, I could understand. It looked to me like Steve Gray wasn't going to do that, just from the way, just from his demeanour, really. He didn't have the look of a man who was going to DQ Hamzah Sheeraz. But he did hit him 3 times when he was down, and there's just no getting past that. And he was obviously down. It was a rush of blood to the head. He wasn't trying to do him any damage. It wasn't anything malicious. He just got carried away with it. But unfortunately, he really should have been disqualified. And then the main event beforehand, I'd picked Lyndon Arthur. I thought he could possibly do again what he'd done the first time, even though I knew Yarde would bring it, would be more physical, would be a bit more educated about the way he was trying to bring the heat. And I thought for 3 rounds, Lyndon was doing pretty well. He was tying him up. He caught him with the odd shot, and Yarde was winning the rounds. But I thought if it went into the second half, then it could get really interesting. And then in the 4th round, all of a sudden it was over. So yeah, it was a good night. It was good. You know, there was a healthy attendance, an exuberant crowd, but interestingly, it was pretty much full. All the seats were pretty much full for the entire undercard. It was one of those nights where everybody came to watch the whole thing, which you don't always see. So yeah, it was good.
All right, let's carry on and talk about Anthony Yarde versus Lyndon Arthur. Deck, what were you thinking going into the fight? Was it repeat or revenge for you going in?
I was a bit repeat, but based on the only evidence we had, knowing that a revenge pick was based on a guess or an assumption that he's got something else in the locker.
Exactly the same.
So
like
it was
rational analysis led me to Yarde.
Yeah, rational was like Lyndon Arthur's going to do it again because he's got two.
Arthur, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. He's got 2 arms now, and he's got the confidence from the first win, and he knows he can do it. And what is Yarde going to change or be able to change in this time? The fact is that I think that Yarde had obviously had all this terrible stuff happening outside the ring with family members dying, and I think that he, off the back of the Kovalev fight, which obviously he did very well in for 1 round, but I think he felt that he was world level and he was taking basically a step back for the Arthur fight, and he almost thought he could just show up. You know what he's like as well, he's a bit posy a lot of the time, and he's one of those fighters who likes to look like he's not trying because he sort of adds to the style. But what he did was turn it on its head completely, and we always knew that was within him, and it's just which one turns up. And I thought the addition of James Cook, although you know, what can someone do in a camp? Really, what can someone really add in a camp? I mean, I think he did as much as anyone could have asked him or paid him to, and that, I think it was a big change. And they needed some extra impetus in that camp, for want of a better word, an extra line in the old camp. And and I think that's what they got. And yeah, I'll be honest, I wasn't picking Yarde before, but I knew he had it in him. But I didn't think he was going to.
There's always a possibility.
Yeah, but I thought Arthur was, like, obviously he's very tough, clearly very tough man. So I didn't think that was going to happen to him. So, I mean, I think it's great, as long as you're not in the Lyndon Arthur business, it's great for boxing, British boxing, world boxing, that Anthony Yarde looks like a star again, because he's one of the few real X Factor sort of guys that we've got in the sport over here, I think.
And you've obviously prepared for rematches. Coming off the back of a loss as well against Mr. Linares. How does that change a fighter's mentality going into a rematch like that? I
think he's obviously.
I know, different situation.
Very different, because I think there's no secret the trouble that Yarde had to deal with going into that fight. But I think a point there that made, and I never thought about that, but I think that's a very strong point. I think coming off the Kovalev fight, did he have one in between or not?
Did he have one of his?
I think he might have got him out of there. Yes, one of those. I think he did. But it was like it was literally it was an exercise, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. But I think now when you look back at it and you think there was so much more improvement in Yarde. But I believe, not just because of no Lyndon, I thought he's going to build on that at all. I know he wasn't. I know he's capable of a lot better than when he fought the Italian. He had it all his own way, but I just thought because he'd have that fear factor again, that's going to make him sharp. And I thought he's going to have to weather an early storm. But I don't know if you guys, if you've seen the weigh-in. I took a bit from the weigh-in. Well, I thought I did. I thought Yarde looked, he'd overcooked it. I thought around the face, sucked in, eyes sucked in, and he always looked fantastic physically. But I thought around the face, I thought, this is going to be interesting, this. When it grows into the second fight, Lyndon's saying about having his right hand, which was a little bit of a worry for me, because the first fight, it was very cagey, but I thought that suited Lyndon. But I think, having that right hand and letting that go, I thought it's going to create more opportunities, but I didn't think it had come into play until the second half of the fight, and I think that might have been the plan. But if you watch that fight back, I've totally come away from the question here. Sorry, mate. But if you watch it back, Yarde landed a right hand inside the first 30 seconds, and commentary didn't pick up on it at the time, but it buzzed Lyndon. It buzzed him. It certainly got his respect. And I don't know whether it was from that or what, but they didn't have the same zip in Lyndon's jab. I felt he didn't have the same zip in it. And then I thought it was right where he was trying to get up close, not allowing Yarde to work. But I think you've got to give credit to Yarde. I think the way he went through the gears, the body shots that finished it was an unbelievable shots. There's two that he landed very heavy, but now it's like you said then, now he's going to fight the winner of my mate CJ against Joe Smith Jr.
Another great fight.
That could just be violence, couldn't it? But I think, like you said, he doesn't always get, well, he gets a lot of sort of bad criticism, Tunde Ajayi, but fair play to him. He really recognised James Cook at the end of it. But yeah, back to the question about preparing, for the rematch. I think you're always anticipating, certainly with Linares, I got a much more improved than Linares. It wasn't that we wasn't expecting it, but he's shown. He went up a few levels. And I thought, I really went into that fight believing, I'm gonna. I thought if it wasn't for that shot I got caught at 6, I would have got to him. So I thought this time I'll be more careful. And he picked his moments a lot better the second time. But I think it's just I think probably the mistake we made was forgetting how much he could improve. Maybe they made that mistake. Maybe part of the team did. But I think we always know Anthony Yarde's a very big puncher, and he caught Lyndon early, and I think that first right hand played a huge part in the fight.
Yeah, I think it was very important that Yarde came out and landed something early in the fight. I think you hit the nail on the head there. He is a bit posy, and he sort of likes to tuck behind the shoulder and kind of look like he's not doing, he's not trying, and kind of go through the gears in that casual way. But yeah, he came straight out of the blocks. First 15, 20 seconds, he caught him with a right hand. He caught him with a couple of short right hands on the inside as well, chopping down to sort of the top and the side of Lyndon Arthur's head. And then I felt like, because we've seen that from Yarde, but we only see him really boxing spurts usually, and he'll do that, and then he'll have 30 seconds of looking at him and kind of shifting about. And I was really impressed with how he was able to sustain that. I think the feet were better than we've ever seen before. Yeah. Myself and my esteemed colleague Jordan over there, we were actually down at down at a golf day for Michael Watson a few months ago, and James Cook was there. And I sort of spoke to him and said, "How are you getting on with Anthony Yarde?" And obviously, we know the trainer dynamic with Yarde and Tunde, and it's an interesting camp. I think it's fair to say. And he said, he's a great student. He listens to everything I say. I said, well, how are you getting on with Tunde? He said, well, I told Tunde some things he didn't want to hear, and he took it. And I think what you said there is really important. Like, we've seen Tunde say some outlandish stuff over the years, and it was good to see in the post fight he didn't grab the mic and go, I told you all. I told.
He recognised him, and it was. And I think he was. I think Tunde would probably be the first to admit they underestimated Lyndon the first time. Going back to that again, I think they knew they had to be on it, because I certainly don't want to say, it was last chance. But it was a big night for Anthony Yarde. I don't know about last chance. It was probably a bit, but it was huge pressure on him.
Where did he go?
Like any world title ambitions would be over. Because Lyndon, I would place as Commonwealth British title level, and that's a good level. But if you want to box for a world title, you've got to be better than that. And I thought he was different, wasn't he? Because rather than look for those big single shots, and you can't win anything at world level looking for big single shots. Fighters are way too good for that. They'll see that coming all day. But he got his feet closer. He punched in combinations more. And there was one moment I kind of remembered where I thought that it was quite a big moment. He was coming forward at one point, whereas in the first fight he'd be inching in, chin tucked in, like you said, and looking for that big single shot. And then just as he was trying to throw it, he'd get jabbed, maybe not that hard. They'd put him off balance, and he'd have to start again. This time he was moving forward, but he had his guard high, his centre of gravity nice and low. He got hit flush in the face by a jab, and he just walked through it. He walked through it, and he couldn't do that in the first fight because he was going about it a different way. And at that stage, I thought, Lyndon Arthur's got problems here. Yeah.
You mentioned the feet there and getting the feet closer to the target. That was the main bit of kind of technical advice, as it were, that James Cook said. He said, we got to get our feet closer to the target. The last fight, we started our attacks from too far away, leaving our feet behind us. So easy for Lyndon to either throw a feint or just touch with a jab and move off. And that's what I was looking for that during the fight. And I felt that that's the best I've seen Anthony Yarde's feet by a million miles.
For a fighter of his calibre, he's always had, his feet are strange, is that his back foot almost disappears behind his front foot, which any amateur coach tell you that shouldn't be happening. He's sort of disappearing behind it. But he still gets that rotation with the right hand somehow like that. But his feet were different this time. And you're right. I think James Cook was the one who probably did that. Unbelievable coach. So for anyone who doesn't know about James Cook, what he'd done in Clapton in particular, where I live in Hackney, the Pedro Club, that place, the Murder Mile, one of the most deprived places in the whole of London, killings all the time. There's a club at the heart of it called the Pedro Club. That's where he got his MBE from doing that. So he's a miracle worker, and he works in miracles in, what did he have, a few months? And that's what he really did. And I think it was those little adjustments. I think they were hurt as a camp, all of them. They were all hurt. And Cook was saying that they were crying to him and stuff. I think that was the way it manifested, was they came out and did a job, because they were so astonished by how badly it went in the first fight. So many truths, and they haven't had to deal with many truths actually, because it's been pretty serene apart from the Kovalev fight. And then they've had to really look at themselves, and I think it's going to be great for everyone going forward now, well, apart from his opponents.
One of the things that we've spoken about in the past, Andy, is rationalising losses. I mean, Anthony Yarde, you lose to Sergey Kovalev, one of the standout light heavyweights of the last 10, 15 years, certainly. You can say, well, it was our first fight at that level, and we had him go in, and we were competitive, and blah, blah, blah. Then the Lyndon Arthur fight, where I agree, I think he would have looked at that as a step back. What's your excuse here? I mean, I know in the immediate aftermath of the fight, they thought they'd won, but by all accounts, when Anthony Yarde went back, something again that we've spoken about, there was no lying. He said he felt that he'd lost the fight once he'd sat down and looked at it and gone through it. That's got to stand him in good stead in the future. The fact that he's able to kind of now move past that, and they've addressed some stuff as opposed to pushing it to one side, which I think is easy to do when you lose into a Kovalev and you haven't boxed at that level before. What next for him? Is it going to be the winner of Joe Smith Jr. versus Callum Johnson? It certainly seems that way.
That's everything that's being said, isn't it? I think that's happening mid-January, so you'd expect it to have early summer. Frank always, it's one of them. It's going to either be a huge domestic showdown. I hope so. I certainly hope so. Or I don't know. Does Frank bring Smith over here? he likes to get his fighters home advantage, but I don't think Yarde's not a huge ticket seller, is he? He's not. I believe he should be a bigger draw than what he is, and that might help. That might help after Saturday, the way he went about his work, because Lyndon had fantastic support in there. I think.
Yeah, he did.
I don't know whether the way I picked up on telly and one or two lads near us who went. Lyndon had the better support probably in there.
When that was really interesting that when they came out the ring walks, he definitely had more support.
I've always found surprising because he has got that, and that, you know, not everyone loves a knockout. Not very often do his fights go the distance. We'll see, but I think the winner of CJ and Smith Jr. fights Yarde without a doubt early summer next year.
All right, we're going to disregard Mr. Crolla from this part of the segment of the podcast. Who wins that? Callum Johnson versus Joe Smith Jr. I think it's fair to say that that's going to be maximum violence from the first bell. Yeah,
shootout. How do you pick it? I mean, I think Joe Smith is so underrated by everyone, but the power that Johnson's got is ridiculous as well. Putting down Beterbiev is it's not easy to do that. No one does that, but it's whether he can capitalise on the moment like that and get a finish. I think I'd have to pick right now. I'd probably pick with my heart and say Johnson, because I feel like he's got a coming of age moment in him. He's got a big moment in him, because we all know everything that he's gone through and stuff. I think just his style. It's just going to be it's hard to pick because anyone could get chinned at any moment. But with that in mind, I'm thinking I'll pick Johnson, but more in hope than expectation.
And because Anthony Crolla's here.
Yeah, you might tell him.
Andy?
Yeah, I agree with all of that, but I'd pick Smith because I just think he's a bit better. The basic reason, and I would pick either one of them to beat Anthony Yarde. No disrespect to Yarde, just because I think the pair of them are that bit further on in their careers. They've got that bit more experience. It's not to say that Yarde couldn't beat either of them, but I think Smith or Johnson would beat Yarde. But it would be, it'd be a good fight. They're two really good fights to watch. Whoever ends up being in the second one, Joe Smith against Callum Johnson is a brilliant fight, isn't it? It just can't miss. And I would love to see Callum Johnson win it, because he's had that stop-start career, hasn't he? And I agree that he's got a big performance in him. I really do think he has. And I think what happened against Beterbiev will stand him in very good stead, particularly if he gets that kind of success, because there is some regret there, I think, isn't there, that maybe he didn't quite make the most of that, because I commentated on that fight, and it was a heavy knockdown. He was in trouble.
Wasn't a flash knockdown, no.
He was in trouble, and he just didn't quite step on the gas when maybe he might have done. So there's not going to be any regrets after this fight against Smith. I don't think he'll be confident, and if an opportunity comes his way, I think he'll take it.
Okay, we have to move on because we've got a lot to cram into this week. We've mentioned it already. Bradley Skeete rolled back the years. Old Sugar Ray Skeete was dancing around the ring, popping Hamzah Sheeraz with the jab until he got hit with some ground and pound. Deck disqualification.
DQ. 100%, and no disrespect to Hamzah Sheeraz either. It's not. I think that he didn't know what was happening really. And it might have been on Boxing Social actually.
It was.
Andy spoke to him, and that he said that he couldn't see what was happening with Skeete's leg. Didn't realise he was kneeling down, and was just caught in the moment. Which I think that is absolutely no problem, but it's still a foul. He should be disqualified for it, and it's the referee's job to identify that. 100% DQ. You can't take a point off for that, because if you acknowledge that it's a foul in that sense, you have to throw him out. And we saw what happened. The reason why you have to throw him out at that point is because Skeete's then finished it from that point, and he's getting caught with everything. It's such fine margins, especially with Skeete and that sort of a fight. You can't afford to close a margin with that sort of a foul and then go, give him a couple of minutes, carry on, mate. And fair play to Skeete, he could have hammed it up, but he's not the fight. He hasn't achieved what he's achieved in his career by being a bottle job or by looking for ways out or anything like that. He's achieved what he's achieved by being like, no, I'm fine, let's do it. And in the end, Hamzah Sheeraz is too big, too powerful, because he's punched him twice on the floor. 100% DQ.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen fighters, we kind of alluded to this before we started filming, we've seen fighters, you get a cuffing shot and,
It wasn't that.
It wasn't that at all. The second shot in particular, that left hook almost spun Bradley Skeete out of the ring. It was such a massive, powerful shot. And kind of with regards to Sheeraz, been outboxed pretty comprehensively throughout the whole fight. You could tell he was pretty stiff and tight throughout the whole fight. Gets his moment and then loses his composure. Andy, DQ?
Yeah, I thought so. It was on the opposite side of the ring to me, but I had a good view of it, and you could see Skeete go down. It looked like a legitimate knockdown, and then you could see him get hit 2-3 times when he was obviously down on a knee. And this is one of the original 7 rules of the prize ring from 1743, that you can't hit a man when he's down. A man on his knees reckoned to be down. It's there. It's if people care to go look for it. So it's one of the oldest ones there is, and no one's saying that he did it maliciously, Sheeraz, or anything like that, like Dec was saying, but he did do it, and you can still get DQ'd even if you miss someone. It's about your actions and the potential consequences of them. I remember doing a bit of research on Humberto Soto for one of his fights a while ago, and he got disqualified once for aiming a big shot at someone who was on his knees, and he missed, but the referee disqualified him anyway, because that's not what you're supposed to do. So yeah, he should have disqualified him, and fighters need to be safe from themselves in a lot of situations, don't they? And that's one of them. It's like asking a fighter if they're okay is like, what's the point in that?
Yeah.
Because you were the same. You
Of course,
say yes.
I don't think Bradley Skeete could have really come up, because if he would have said, no, I can't carry on, he would have got the, you spewed it. When I don't know, it was that late, especially not just the second shot, the big left hook. It was 3, wasn't it? 1 was a bit borderline, 2.
Yeah.
You thought, he's in trouble here, but the third was, obviously, I think, dress up however you want. I can't find anyone who could have any kind of argument to say that shouldn't have been a disqualification. I think what happened with it, I don't like, you both said, I don't think it was malicious or like that from Hamzah Sheeraz. I think, I think a bit of it was, he'd been outboxed all night. Bradley Skeete had boxed lovely, he'd picked, he'd poked all night, and he just outboxed Hamzah Sheeraz. He couldn't pin him down. And I think it was a legitimate knockdown. And I think once he'd there fought, he let go quick. And I don't think, he probably didn't realise what he'd done at the time. But yeah, again, it'll be interesting now to see what happens. I know like a complaint's going in front of the board. Whether they're going to try and change something or not, I don't know. And I think in Steve Gray's, defence, if he watched it back, I should have disqualified it. There's, you couldn't say any other, but it probably happened, that quickly at the moment. Don't want to say start bringing VAR into boxing. If he did have that luxury, then it obviously would have changed his decision. But it is, you've got to feel for Bradley Skeete. Listen, we don't know what would have happened. Sheeraz might have got Bradley in the next 2 rounds.
I think
he was getting to him. It's just whether he didn't look too hurt when he went down. Whether Bradley could have then picked his feet up, danced. Dom, who's always vocal, had set out a great game plan. Whether he could have talked him through, you don't know. Do you know what I mean? He might have saw the finish line and got up, because he must have been way up on the cards. I'm not sure what it was, but it'd be interesting to see what happens now if the board do anything regarding the decision.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not holding my breath.
Well, they've done a circular that they're looking at doing a rematch.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah.
When did that come out today?
Came out today, as far as
So I've been busy mourning the death of Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury today.
But
that,
that's a great one. And I think it almost shows that they're listening in a way, because the board used to be such a closed shop, and they wouldn't. Everyone's seen the interview, Robert Smith and stuff, but they are listening, and they know that they have to. They are trying to save face now. It's a different world now. There's so many people basically criticising everything they do. They have to respond to that. And on the subject of Hamzah Sheeraz, I still think he's one of the best prospects we've got in the whole country. Yeah. And I think he'll grow massively from what happened from that, not from that moment, from that fight, not having it his own way. A bit like Anthony Yarde in the Arthur fight, there's a slightly different way, but I think he'll massively grow from that, and I think he'll be really good in a rematch. I really do, and I think he just couldn't get going. And Skeete probably expected just to turn up, old man, and that's not what he got.
You're totally right when you said that we don't know what would have happened in the rest of that fight, because he did knock him down. It was a proper knockdown, and it was early in the 8th. And I had him 6-1 down after 7 rounds, but he's knocked him down early in the 8th, so that's 10-8. Maybe he would have knocked him down again. We don't know.
Yes.
But he could have turned it around from there without those late blows. And I was still kind of quite impressed by him, because he didn't really lose the faith in what he was doing. He kept that technique together. He started to get bit by bit closer. He just boxed really well, Skeete, and never really allowed him to hit him to the body. But he stuck with his game plan, Sheeraz, and we don't know that it wouldn't have worked. because of what happened. But an early knockdown in the 8th round, that's a 10-8. Say you win the next 2 rounds 10-9. I had it 6-1, but I'm not a judge. That might have been enough to win the fight. Who knows how they had it? I didn't see any of the cards.
Yeah, and particularly we all know Hamzah Sheeraz, BT, Queensbury, very much invested in him. He's a young talent coming through. Bradley Skeete, with all due respect, doesn't have an awful lot to offer. Frank Warren obviously used to work together for a large portion of Bradley's career. I think it's fair to say that maybe the judges didn't quite have it 6-1 at that point. We obviously don't know. But yeah, I'd be very surprised if they had it that wide. Again, flicking through to the rest of the card. Opening the show, Kamil Sokolowski paid for Christmas with a win over George Fox. We all know Kamil. He's a road warrior. He'll fight anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere.
Twice on Sunday.
Twice on a Sunday. All of that's to make you fight Jake Paul. But yeah, I mean, you said, Andy, before we kind of come on here, well, as we started rather, wasn't really an upset despite what the bookies had it certainly beforehand. I mean, I saw some crazy betting slips of 33-1 for Sokolowski points going into, I think, the 6th, 7th round, which is just unbelievable. But yeah, great win for Kamil Sokolowski.
Yeah, it was, and that's one of those. It didn't enter my head to look at odds for that, but that's exactly the kind of fight that I would normally bet on, because you look at the 2 records and people who price stuff up, they don't have time to go into these things, and that they can't sit down and watch all of Kamil Sokolowski's fights. But we know, because we've seen him, that he's not only beaten some good fighters, but that he's deserved to beat a few more, and probably, and hasn't got the decision. And George Fox had got 4 wins and boxed nobody. And he was stepping up to 8 rounds for the first time, never been beyond 4. And for me, that made Sokolowski favourite. And I enjoyed it. It was a good fight to watch. But George Fox was a bit of a confusing performance, because he kind of boxed like he was in control, but he wasn't. He was losing the rounds, but he kind of had the air of a man who, wasn't worried.
There was a lot of posturing and a lot of head shaking.
He was losing. And Don was trying to get it through to him, Don Charles. And then at the start of the final round, he kind of like slapped him hard on the legs and sent him out for the final round. And you're just thinking, you're losing. And you're losing comfortably. And when the referee scorecard came out, this is no disrespect to Lee Every, but whoever it would have been, I'm kind of sitting there thinking, don't be 79-75 to George Fox, please. And it went the way it should have gone. It's just a bit of a strange performance from Fox, to be honest with you. But Sokolowski, he's a handful for anybody, and I think there'll be. I can think of quite a few people who could do with a fight against him.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I think like Kamil Sokolowski, when you look at him kind of 5-6 years ago, I mentioned something about this after the fight. He's not quite the same physical specimen as he was, but through the years and years of boxing these good opponents and boxing, high level ex-amateurs or even, pros, he's become quite a crafty fighter, and that's he outboxed George Fox.
He did. He
outfoxed him. Cheers, Dave.
He was just outlanding him. He was.
When I saw the fight had been made, I was like, wow, fair play to you. Yeah. Step. Who was it that Solomon Dakers boxed the other week?
Solomon Dakers boxed Sokolowski.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the same. It was the same thing when that.
And he gave a good account of himself in that fight as well.
When that fight got made, it was like, whoa, fair play to them. He's an S-Jam fighter, right? Yeah. Yeah, and that's very ballsy as well. Did a number on him though. I actually backed the underdog in that one. Didn't quite pay up like it did this weekend, but he's a real cult hero, isn't he, Sokolowski? There's a few of them knocking about, and he's one of them. More so now after the weekend.
Oh yeah, big time. He's got it in my house. Moving on, Crolla, Dennis McCann. Lots been made about Dennis McCann on the way up. We saw him again this time at he's actually, I think he technically was a featherweight. Boxed this past weekend. What did you make of him?
I like Dennis. I think the opponent, I think he'd still be there now. He wasn't going anywhere, was he? He was just, I think everything about him was built to take a good shot, wasn't it? It was it. But I like McCann. I think next year we're going to see him let off the leash a little bit now. I think we're going to have to. What is he now? I'm not sure how many he had now, Dennis.
11-0.
11. So I think
20.
We want to see him in titles, yeah. I know he's still a baby, but I think hits hard at the weight. So I think he's shown good boxing ability on Saturday. I think he's fractured the knuckle. Yeah. I think he knew that sort of straight away. But I like McCann. I think he's got a great team in Al Smith, Eddie Lamb there. I think although he's only 20, I'd like to see him chasing titles sort of towards the latter part of next year.
Yeah, I think while those opponents are obviously giving him rounds, and it's important at this stage of his career as well, I think he needs a bit of stimulation.
Yeah.
I think he needs somebody to make him think about things rather than... I mean, obviously, you have to think about something to prise somebody open who's that tough and is coming not to get stopped. But I think he needs somebody throwing something back, Andy.
Yeah, and he's had a good year because he got taken 8 a couple of times earlier in the year, and then same thing again on Saturday against an opponent who was there to try and get something done himself. And I had quite a long chat with him and Al Smith at the weigh-in, and he had a few more pounds to play with, so he was on good form at the weigh-in. And actually, every time you see him now, physically he looks different because he is that young that 4 or 5 months of more S&C and him growing, just like he looks like a man now. And
it'd be interesting to see what weight he ends up at.
It's still bantamweight for him for titles. And I was saying, so what do you think about Cash Farouk, Lee McGregor? Who do you think is going to win, for example? They were kind of split over that one. And I said, well, what are you looking at next year? And he said, well, you would have thought that whoever wins that fight might vacate the British and the Commonwealth, and one of them could be available. Not that he doesn't want to fight either one of them. He's like all of you. He would fight anybody, but they're not going to want to fight him. Well, there's just absolutely no point in it for them, is there? But he's got 68 pro rounds under his belt now at 20. So I think Frank Warren, as he generally does, has moved him really well. And like you say, the iBox is a great gym. I think it's an underrated kind of gym.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan. I like him. He's got... People came out of the bars and off the concourses to watch him. That was quite interesting, I thought. When he came in, all of a sudden seats that were empty were taken, and they stayed taken for the rest of the night.
Deck, fan of McCann?
Massive fan of McCann. He's a good character and he's so young, but it's just a bit like what you were saying there, Ant, that I remember Grove saying actually that Adam Booth always said to him, you can't, if you box bad people, you turn bad, basically. And I'm not saying the guy was bad, but I'm saying he's levels below. And there's only so long you can do that before you need to. I think it's been perfect timing and they've been really nicely handled because he's so young and he's learning on the job in that sense. But I think he's got a real good character. I think he's clearly fearless and so confident, and he's got it all to, like, he can back it all up as well. And he punches hard. I think he's really exciting. And the idea of another 10 years of him, for instance, and he's still only 30 at that point, he can go all the way for me. But I think now's the time to move him on. But he's in such good hands, trainer-wise, and I think Frank is the one in terms of moving him at the correct pace.
It'd be interesting to see who they would try and get for him because he's still a bantamweight. Is Mark Leach still a bantamweight? I know he's boxed.
He fought on Saturday night.
He can do
won in 20 odd seconds on Saturday night, Mark.
Can't he? Because I feel a bit sorry for him because he had a massive win against Kazakhstan.
That was a super bantam, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a super bantam. But I think prior to that, like he went up a weight for that.
Yeah.
He did,
and can get a fight.
He can still do bantam. After that, he had a good win against Thomas Assomba as well.
Yeah.
Thomas Assomba, very capable. That's it.
That might not be a bad opponent for, not next for Dennis McCann. Obviously, we know what Thomas Assomba's like, but a few fights down the line, that could be a good.
But Leach is a tough one, isn't it? Because that's a great fight, but it's a bit like with Farouk or McGregor. McCann will probably look at that and be like, what we're going to get out of it.
Well, if you're Mark Leach, I beat Kez Ashford.
Yeah.
I want a proper fight. I don't want to fight this kid with 11-0 coming up. This is the natural thing of boxing. You're looking up the ladder rather than down, aren't you?
That'd be a great fight.
I mean, people talked about COVID boxing and how people are being forced to take 50-50 fights and they'll get rewarded for it. Well, he went up a weight, was in the away corner, boxed brilliantly, won over 10 rounds, and then nothing happened for him. I mean,
Yeah, it's not been fair to Mark Leach.
No, totally not. Totally not.
Stateside, lot to discuss for us. We're getting through it. Let's start at the top, work our way down. Devin Haney successfully defending his WBC lightweight title, your old division, Mr. Crolla. So we'll come to you first. What did you make of Devin Haney's performance?
I think it was a very good fight, and it went sort of almost how we expected it. I knew there was going to be questions asked. I thought it was a very good fight, and entertaining fight. With Haney, I think there is a bit of Mayweather about him, not just sort of stylistically. I think he'll always find a way. I'm not suggesting, listen, I'd put him number one in that division, although he's right up there. My only worry is I'm not sure how tight he is at the weight, I'm not sure how tight he is at the weight. He's a big lad. He's young. He's growing. I don't think he's going to be a lightweight too much longer. Diaz did look a weight or two below him, didn't he, in there? But so I've enjoyed the fight. I think I'm just when you look at, you know, in that division, the huge puncher we mentioned is in Tank Davis. Garcia hits much harder than I think people give him credit for.
I agree.
Obviously, Lomachenko. I don't know whether, and I might be totally wrong, I might be way off, because I think his boxing ability is fantastic, and on his night has got potential to beat almost any of them, but I'm just not sure if he's a lightweight anymore. I don't know what you guys think. I think he's very big at the weight. But listen, all in all, JoJo Diaz is a quality fighter, and he beat him. He beat the right man won. It was Diaz pushed him hard, asked questions, but Haney's class shone through in the end.
Yeah, JoJo Diaz obviously is very experienced as an amateur and a professional. He's always going to go and give a good account of himself. But I sensed, as you just said there, that Haney was always going to be just that little bit too big, a little bit too long. But having said that, JoJo Diaz had more than the odd bit of success through the fight.
I think he did better than I thought. I think it was the 4th round, so he landed big shots.
Yeah,
and I was imagining if it was Gervonta Davis in there, because Haney didn't seem to pick up southpaw that very well. And again, I think he's someone who's learning on the job.
Yeah,
and that's why he
still
grew
young,
into the
isn't
fight.
he?
Exactly.
Still a baby. Still a baby.
You know, real small amateur career, and went pro very 15 or whatever in Mexico. Yeah. So like he's learning on the job, and I think it showed in that performance that he grew into it. A couple of moments, he doesn't look like he likes trading at all.
Yeah,
and I must say there was a lot of shifting around, to be fair, this whole month with the Lopez fight and Kambosos in my own head about how we ranking. It's all kind of hypothetical, but it was a good win. It was almost what I expected. I thought it would be a bit more serene for him. I thought it would be a bit more Shakur Stevenson-esque, in that he would sort of just have it all his own way, and he didn't. But it's a great win against a great opponent. Yeah. I do think if JoJo Diaz maybe is more of a super feather, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I felt like.
He looked smaller, and I think the power-wise, that was probably reflected, because he did catch him clean a few times. Whether that's Devin Haney's got a great chin, or whether the power's not quite there at lightweight for Diaz. But he did his job, and we'll get on to Davis as well. He did his job as well at the weekend, but it was almost asked more questions than it answered for me about Devin Haney, but that's because of how young he is.
Andy?
Yeah, I'm similar. I don't know exactly why, but I just don't quite buy Haney, and he's done everything you could really ask of him so far. So I don't really have any grounds for it, but I just don't. I think there's just something slightly missing. The all-round package is good, and you look at the way they've managed him. His dad, Bill, being a veteran of the music business, what they've done with him career-wise has been perfect as well, really, because they didn't sign anything exclusive until big money arrived from DAZN. That was clever.
He's been paid. I was about to say he's been paid very, very well, hasn't he?
Didn't fall into that trap you can do when you're young of being seduced by someone buying you a car or a house or whatever it is. They kept themselves free, and it's paid off. I don't know. I just don't. With someone like Davis, I see it. And with Stevenson, I see it as well. With Haney, I don't really. He doesn't really excite me particularly.
I agree with that. I would agree with that.
I think he's a good, solid all-rounder, but he's just missing the X factor. He doesn't punch particularly hard. Yeah. For somebody as big and as long as he is, and he's got such a lovely jab, there were a lot of times at this past weekend, we know JoJo Diaz is a good fighter, and we knew that he was going to have his moments where he was going to be able to close the distance. But I was surprised at just how easy he was able to do it at times. And I think what you've said there about him needing to go up in weight, I think the feet definitely slowed after 4 or 5 rounds, and he was forced to a degree by JoJo Diaz to stand there.
Linares a bit as well. Remember, right? He got buzzed a little bit late on, didn't he, with Linares? And whether that's down to the way, Linares is a very good fighter, as I know, but that's what I think. That's what just makes me think with the weight as well.
Yeah, he is a big boy. He's got very, very small waist, big back, shoulders. You can tell that he's going to fill out. Yeah, very young.
But one thing about the whole situation there is this slightly strange dynamic in the corner, because you've got the dad in the corner giving him instructions.
There's your mate Mickey Bay in there.
Mickey Bay's in there, but then you've got Ben Davison there, who's sort of training him. So then you got Bill giving him the instructions sort of for kind of half the minute, and then he sort of looks up to Davison, sort of like, what are you saying, mate? And then he sort of gives him some instructions. And I don't know enough about the dynamic that the dad and Ben Davison are on the same page and they're sort of discussing this in the breaks or during the rounds or whatever. It's almost like there's two voices clearly. And is there two voices in the camp as well? And what's that going to do for him? Maybe it's great. Maybe it's exactly what he needs. But it struck me since the addition of Ben Davison into that corner, it was a bit left field anyway, but very interesting one. And I'm interested to see how that develops.
Yeah, there's a lot of cooks. I mean, you saw with the fact that he turned up late. There seems to be a lot of, I wouldn't say chaos, but I don't think, there's not a chief in that camp. I don't think. Obviously, Bill Haney's kind of the manager, and he kind of has to say for those sort of things, and he still works with him in the City Gym in Vegas. But in the City Gym in Vegas, even then, I've been with Haney when he's training. He's got Mickey Bay, he's got his dad, Mike McCallum does some bits and pieces with him as well down there. Now you've got Ben Davison, and it just all looks a little bit too much at this stage of his career. And I think what we spoke about beforehand and kind of the way that he's been developed, it's almost like, and this was something that I'd actually thought a while ago when he was coming up in the WBC, and there was that whole, is he going to fight Lomachenko? Is Lomachenko going to move on and end up boxing Zaur Abdullayev? And I feel like maybe it is Bill Haney's kind of experience in the music industry. And so they're trying to kind of, I feel like Devin Haney is handled like he's a 28, 29-year-old multi-weight world champion, which he might well prove to be in the future. But at this point in his career, I think what's around him and the dynamic in the camp is a little bit ahead of where he's actually at as a fighter.
Yeah, I remember he was around fight week for Fury Wilder, and I think it was the Thursday. He just kind of appeared in the press room at the MGM Grand, and I saw a whole big crocodile of people come through the door, and it took me a while to work out that it was him. Because there were so many people.
He has got his own crocodile though, hasn't he? He's got his own crocodile, like his own gas man. What's he called?
Church.
There was so many of them. Like there was. I reckon there was at least 10. And I looked at him and I just said to our producer, says Devin Haney over there. Do you want me to go and get him? And he looked at the kind of scene, and he's not really a boxing guy, this lad. He said, well, can you get him? And I just said, yeah, he's just a really sound lad.
I remember meeting him in New York, and his dad, good guys.
And I just like any of us would, you just go over and you ask him. You don't go through him to go through her to go through him. But they're all looking at me, just thinking, who's this guy? And I'm just thinking, I'm not justifying whatever your job is in this carry on but it just rings alarm bells with me when I see fighters with loads of people around them. Later in the week, we've got a press conference with Terence Crawford and Sean Porter. Sean Porter turns up with his dad. That's it.
Yeah.
Terence Crawford turns up with Bomac. That's it.
Yeah.
And you just think that's how what I like to see. Just that tighter circle. But I don't know.
No, I completely agree with you. I agree, and I think there is definitely something missing with Haney. Maybe it is that he needs to go up and weight. Maybe he's frying himself too much, and which is why for the first 3 or 4 rounds, admittedly, JoJo Diaz didn't really do an awful lot in the first couple of rounds. Kind of eased himself into the fight, which I think was always probably his plan. But then Haney started to slow down. He was caught a few times. I think he was buzzed a few times in the fights as well. Diaz, not a known puncher even at super featherweight. So the fact that Haney has now been certainly hurt by Linares. I mean, he was really hurt in that fight. It took him a couple of rounds really we never really recovered. He sort of saw out the last couple of rounds. Diaz lands on him, and you just think about your Gervonta Davises, your Ryan Garcias. Well, I agree with you. I spoke to Shane McGuigan, who of course had Luke Campbell boxing Ryan Garcia, and he said as soon as Garcia came out, he's like, you could hear that whistle of the shots as he's letting them go. And Campbell said to me afterwards, he said, I took one on the gloves and I thought, that doesn't feel very good.
Do you know what? If I could pick any fight from a fan's point of view, it'd be Garcia and Haney.
They boxed like 6 times amateurs.
As amateurs,
It'd be quality.
I don't. Well, we all know that it's not always as easy as that, but they're on the same platform.
That's so you think that would be the easiest one to make rather than Haney Lomachenko. Obviously, he's got to come through Commoner. Haney Davis, but you'd think that would be the easiest one to make, and for me, it'd probably be the best one.
Because I think you've got two guys there as well who are still very young. They're still developing. Certainly Garcia, and this is again one of the things that Shane McGuigan says, he has that kind of brash arrogance of youth where he's like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to let my hands go and knock you out. And you need that. And then you've got somebody like Haney who's kind of the opposite to that, but he's not as well-rounded as you need to be that master boxer slickster to keep it tight on the outside. So I think that's a great fight to make. For me, and we're going to come on to talking about him shortly, but there's something about that Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia mix that when you remember when they were both on Mike Tyson's podcast?
Yes.
There's just there's something about that fight that's really appealing to me.
Tension
the build-up.
Just
the
the characters. They're just the characters. You've got two guys who are, sort of polar opposites, really.
That's what it is. I think that's what it is, and I think they're both acutely aware of that. They're both acutely aware of how different they are. Davis probably looks at him like probably hates him.
Yeah, I think that one looks like one's looks from he's from the projects, isn't he? He's from Baltimore. He's been brought up, and Ryan Garcia looks like he's come up through the Disney Channel, doesn't he? But both can fight, both can wallop, and. Yeah, do you know what, I might take it back. Yeah, we could probably pick one. But I don't think that's for the number one in the division.
No.
For, fan friendly, that'd be the one, actually.
There's just something about it. Like, I remember when it was being discussed, and you had that, like, Garcia was coming off that win against Luke Campbell, where he had to show something. He got knocked down, got up, won by stoppage, and then he was talking about Davis, who's going to fight Manny Pacquiao.
He was saying, I remember that one, Haney's in the crowd, they both got sort of the same belt or whatever, and he says, I want Tank. At that point, at that moment, he said that's how much he wants that fight, and he knows that he ain't going to get it, and so he's just sort of poking the bear a little bit.
I remember, honestly, you remember when Liam Smith boxed Mungai? So that was 2018, and I was talking to Ryan Garcia. And no one was there, and not like he's going to try and impress me saying he wants Tank, but he went. Finally, he said, "I want Tank." He was saying it, like, I'm thinking he genuinely wanted to. There's no reason to say it otherwise, but then since then he seems to have developed. He looks a bit more like a man now. He literally did look about 14. Back then. It's I think he does want these fights. I think he's got tremendous self-belief. I think you mentioned there with Luke. I don't think he got the credit deserved for that. Luke's a quality fighter, and he put him down. He put him down with a great shot. It wasn't a flash knockdown.
No.
But for me, it was how within a minute later, and this isn't being disrespectful to Luke. I think James sort of say the same. Garcia just started walking Luke down and hitting him hard for the remainder of the fight.
And that's what we're talking about, that kind of that arrogance of youth. Shane said so Shane and his assistant, Josh Pritchard. So he turned to Pritchard and he said he was up at 5, and he said he was up at 2. And then he said, no, he couldn't have been up at 2. He landed a perfect shot, dropped him heavy. He was up at 2. Go back and watch the fight. He gets up at 2. And Shane said he got heavy knockdown.
It was a great shot. Yes.
Like Campbell can punch. Certainly that left hand, he catch you on the end of the shot, stands you up and hit you with that southpaw left hand. He can really punch. And then I remember Shane said to me that they discussed it in a corner, like, come on, like, don't get reckless. But go. And he said at the start of the next round, in the third round, Garcia came out and threw an 8-punch combination. They just came out, and he said, and Shane was like, he wasn't feeding him shots. They were all big, heavy shots, and you could hear the whistle. And if you Luke Campbell in that fight, you've landed, okay, Garcia slightly was able to turn away from it a little bit, but it's still
a big shot.
Still a big shot. Yeah. And then for him to get up and come back at you like that must have been heartbreaking at the time. But yeah, Garcia, we've got to see him back in the ring. I mean, this last couple of days, he's put out more tweets than Boxing Social in the last few days, talking about wants to fight Haney. Haney wouldn't do this. Tank won't do this. We need to see him back in the ring.
Put his name in for Kambosos, didn't he, as well? I think everyone did, didn't they? But
I'd like to see Haney kind of like rebel a little bit against this carefully crafted kind of machine that's been built around him, and it's been built really, really well. But one of the reasons why I love boxing so much is because you lot are not like Premier League footballers. You say what you want and you say what you think, and in the end, you're going to get in there and fight. And that's what this is. That's why it appeals to me. People want to seem to, every now and again, they want to seem to try and repackage it as, I think I said it the other week, as like sort of being a bit Blue Petery. Boxing isn't that. For me, Gervonta Davis is what boxing is. The kind of vibe that he gives off. And I know sometimes they'll say things that they shouldn't, and they'll behave in a way that's not ideal. But ultimately, they're fighters. And I think Haney probably will just maybe snap a little bit at some point and turn around and just say, this is all great, but where are the fights? Like, I'm not here to You know,
But-
I'm not here for an endorsement off
I know what you're gonna
Lexus.
say.
I'm here for fight.
Yeah, I was sort of say, but will Gervonta say that? Was that what you knew I was going to say? Because, and I think he's certainly, don't know him, but you just imagine he's got the attitude of, yeah, we'll have it. You have got that attitude of, yeah, do you know?
Yeah.
But obviously, that's the big criticism with Gervonta Davis, is that, oh, he's only fighting PBC fighters. And, you know, I think Leonard Elby's always saying, oh, the numbers Tank does, he's a star. But realistically, can you see him being in with any of those fighters? You know, your Lomachenkos, your Garcias, your Haney's, Kambosos.
They all need big money,
Course.
and they want to give the opponent small money. And like there's only so much money you get from. I think he got $1 million, Davis, which is great. Like, well done to him. But
Yeah.
but then you look at the rest of the card. That they're clearly not. He's not selling that big because he's not gonna, is he? He needs a big fight, Davis, to do that. And then this is the problem with all these that we talk about. These lightweight divisions. We talk about all sorts of divisions where you just know actually in your heart of hearts it's probably not going to happen. A lot of these. Love it too. And then you wonder why boxing doesn't really appeal to the wider sporting public, but you just know it, don't you?
In that division, I tweeted something like it, and I didn't realise he's with Lou DiBella, isn't he, Kambosos?
Is.
But you'd imagine now, all those who we've mentioned, and this isn't in any way disrespectful to Kambosos, but all four of those believe they probably beat Kambosos and beat him well.
All the belts.
So it's not, I don't want to say, buying the belts, because it's certainly no foregone conclusion after his performance against Lopez. But it'll be interesting to see who goes for it. Do you know what I mean? And I think where Eddie and Kambosos, they've kept, you know, he stayed there. Whether they will make that huge offer for Haney, because I think that's a style where he thinks, no, that's perfect, it's made for me. But then watching the Diaz fight, will Kambosos think, no, I can drag him into those exchanges where Haney doesn't look, you know, too comfortable. I don't know. It's interesting. Then you don't know the winner of Saturday's fight coming up, with Lomachenko coming to the top rank, going big. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Kambosos next.
It will be very interesting to see what happens with him next. I think you hit the nail on the head there. All of those lightweights will all fancy their chances of beating him. As good as he boxed against Teofimo Lopez, and he did box out of his skin. It was a great performance. I think that he boxes Haney. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
DAZN are making a big play in Australia. It's one of the few fights that you can take an American fighter out of US prime time and put him in a completely different time zone, not pay-per-view. Haney's not pay-per-view fighter in America anyway, because he's boxing on DAZN. So it's not like you're giving up Showtime pay-per-view numbers at prime time. DAZN are making a big play in Australia. We've seen comments about the fact that they're, scaling down their American kind of approach is probably an understatement from some of the comments that we've seen. So I think that works. He's boxed Lee Selby on a Matchroom card, boxed Teofimo Lopez on a Matchroom card randomly, and I think that's where that goes. And I think it's probably the only fight that's going to keep Haney down at 135. Because I think if that fight wasn't there, I think he moves up.
Moves up, does that. He's got all the belts, and then he goes maybe.
Yeah, that's what I think. Staying with Kambosos and Haney, how does that fight go?
Do you know what I think? I think Kambosos, the biggest problem he's got now is that nobody's going to ever underestimate him again.
Yeah,
never. And everyone knows what's at stake. Everyone knows what he can do. People should have realised it in the after the Lee Selby fight, really. But I think that he was underestimated by Lopez, whether he had the problem with his chest or whatever, whether that held him back or whatever. But I think that now someone like Haney is going to. I think Haney has the ability to outbox him over 12 rounds. I really do, because I think he'll be bang on it. There won't be there won't be moments in the fight that he will allow Kambosos to work like Lopez did. But saying that, off the back of what I saw against JoJo Diaz, I feel like Kambosos could really mix it up, put it on him, and he watched that fight. He almost saw it in the interview. You could see it in his eyes after the fight. Kambosos is like, yes, please. This guy is he's made for me. That's what he's thinking. But I think that I feel like Haney, if they made it and you asked me to put 10 on it, I'd back Haney to win on points in that fight. But it's another great fight, and I think it will actually happen. And that's the beauty of Kambosos. He's like a wild card in there, isn't he? It's just like yeah, fine, I'll
It's
fight whoever it is.
absolutely what the lightweight division needed. They
Literally.
needed somebody to come in there, upset the apple cart, and say, "I've got the belts now." Who fucking wants?
Yeah,
that's what he
literally.
need. That's what he needed to do, and that's exactly what he has been
how
fantastic.
good is it? Yeah.
Since I mean, obviously we saw him with the Selby fight. You've spoken about kind of speaking to him there, and that self. I mean, Australian sportsmen, as we know, as you mentioned to Ebony Bridges live on Boxing Social, they don't tend to suffer crisis of confidence.
Yeah.
They're always very kind of bullish about their chances in any sporting contest. But it's one thing saying it and doing it against Lee Selby. It's another thing going to Vegas, fighting the undisputed, whatever you want to call him, Teofimo Lopez. And if he can walk through the fire, and he walked through the fire against Teofimo Lopez, and Lopez went out there and looked to try and bang him out. And he was saying all week, I'm going to go there, I'm going to let my hands go, I'm going to knock him out in the first round, try and knock him out in the first round. Kambosos felt the power and came through it. We've seen Haney, we haven't seen him really box 12 rounds, just sticking behind the jab, sort of against Gamboa a little bit, but Gamboa and Kambosos, the freshness of Kambosos, that arrogance that he's got, he's an unbeaten fighter, his confidence will be through the roof. I give the edge to Kambosos in that fight. I do. I give the edge to Kambosos. I think that Haney would probably be able to stifle him for a few rounds, and eventually Kambosos would drag him into a dogfight, and then we'll really see what Haney's all about.
And I do think that another point, a little sort of vignette in that fight, is how does Kambosos cope when he's got, like he's saying, 80,000 Aussies backing him. He's used to being a road warrior, turning up being like underestimated and doing a job. What about when he's the main attraction?
I think
he'd love.
Never
know. You never know.
Yeah.
Like you speak to Bellew about Goodison Park, for instance. He's like, it was the worst experience of his life. It was so much riding on it, so much on his shoulders. You just never know. I think Kambosos would really.
You never know. You just think how he's set up. Like how he's wired, you seem to think.
Surely.
Like, I remember listening
really
to,
fancy
you know, when you listen to him and
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's not about being disrespectful, you're thinking, oh, it's this cheesy gladiator stuff, but
That's what
I was thinking, no, he genuinely believes it.
Yeah,
he
he does.
genuinely believes it. And someone with that kind of belief, I think I said it like in the build-up, you know, Betfred, I think someone has that kind of belief, and it was genuine belief. If they start having a bit of success early, which he did with that knockdown, they become a very, very hard man. They become a man possessed, and that's what it was that night. It's just how long Haney can stick to that plan, box him at distance. Like I said, I'm with you. I go Haney points, but we're aware of Kambosos just pile the pressure on.
And he boxed beautifully as well at times.
Yeah, it wasn't like
It's
he
not just
just
the pressure.
bum rushed
Yeah.
Lopez and just stuck on his chest and stuff. He was showing him the jab, whipping the hook round the side.
Of course, I think the thing with Kambosos as well, people forget. I for one did because I thought him and Selby was so close, but you don't spark Manny Pacquiao all those rounds unless you're very capable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
They're getting him back for a reason.
I just think with someone like him, his temperament's so key, isn't it, in elite level sport, particularly boxing, and he's just shown a rock solid temperament.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it matters if he's away or if he's at home. I don't think it really matters who's in the opposite corner. Somebody's going to beat him at some point. That's the way the world.
And he has got
works.
that attitude again as well. Like
Yeah.
you know, if you don't, I think he's got that attitude. You know, you win some of these mega fights, but you might win some.
To beat him, it is going to be hard earned.
Yeah. And you could.
Yeah, and as Haney got that in him.
Do you know
he's got one of them
the only
at this
person
point.
I think who beats him well is Lomachenko. I think it.
Yeah.
Again, I think he takes him apart. But I think anyone else in that division.
Yeah, I still think Lomachenko's the best fighter in that division.
Yes, same, without a doubt.
Lopez, massive win. But one massive win, a Hall of Fame career does not make.
Yeah.
Whereas Lomachenko's been doing it for however
I just believe that's the fight that won't happen. Kambosos, Lomachenko, and if you was looking at Kambosos, you'd say the same. I think you'd look to get the Haney fight, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want as much as Lomachenko. We know he's a pound for pound stock.
Yeah.
One of the, certainly one of the greatest amateur fighters of all time. One of the best pros of his generation in such a short space of time. But you think about the money that's on the table for a Haney fight, for a Gervonta Davis fight, if he was going to box on pay per view in the US. And you look at the style that Lomachenko's got, you probably would look at that and go, actually, yeah, maybe not. Lopez, on the other hand, I mean, you mentioned his performance against Teofimo Lopez, which I thought, certainly for the first 6 rounds, was disciplined. He stuck to the game plan. He was concentrated. And you compare that to his camp. Look, take nothing away from Kambosos. We're not going to, certainly not really going to discuss the chest issue that Lopez had afterwards. But somebody said this on Twitter. if you were looking at a kind of way to not defend your world title for the first defense, it would be that. Going out in the first round, trying to blow him away, get rid of him straight away, overestimating him, and then blowing out, which is what he did. Yeah. Lopez was blowing out of his arse after 3 or 4 rounds. Kambosos was still there.
You see stuff in boxing sometimes which you just shake your head, don't you, where you just think, how can you make that kind of mistake that people have made so many times before?
I think,
like when Andy Ruiz turned up for the rematch with Joshua at 20 stone 3, you think,
have you not watched boxing before?
Done this.
We spoke about this, didn't we? We've kind of, with boxing being, okay, you mentioned earlier about reinventing the wheel, and people want to kind of say it's something that it's not now. If you look back through all of the years, you have these examples just repeated and repeated and repeated every single generation, and people don't seem to learn from them. And you continue in the trend of the last however many years of, okay, young guy comes from nothing, wins title, gets lots of money, takes his eye off the ball, gets beat. Like, it is rinse and repeat in this sport, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think when you get to that, when you have that moment, you're not sort of prepared to take stock like that and be like, all right, I'm not going to do what everyone else does at this point, because at that point you're famous and got loads of money. So then you're not thinking about it.
You're invincible, aren't you?
I think there's too much. I think there was too much chaos in. I know we don't want to dwell on it because it's old news now, but there's too much chaos in that camp. We know that the dad and everything else is just, it's all weird, but it was just about as badly. It went as badly as it could have done. But then someone posted that video of him taking body shots from that strongest man in the world or whatever, and you just think, that was 2 weeks out, and you think, who was allowing that to happen in the camp? Like, the old man's probably in the gym at that point. How is that? Imagine he'd done, like, you ain't got to be a good fighter to hit someone be the strongest man in the world, to hit someone with your fist
the strongest
at full
man
blood in the small man at 135 pounds. It's just like beggars belief.
It was also bringing weight down, which I've mentioned it a few times tonight.
Someone allowed that. People were allowing that.
Yeah, I've mentioned it a few times tonight. That was, I think, certainly an issue, with that.
$1,000,000%.
When Callum Smith boxed Canelo, Teofimo Lopez and his dad was in the bar after the fight and that. And honestly, I've never seen a lightweight in my life. I was like saying, he'll never fight lightweight again. He'll never ever fight at lightweight again. He was absolutely massive. And, talking to him up close and that. And he was a great guy as well, by the way. But it was the frame of him was huge, and don't get me wrong, he wasn't in camp, but he didn't look soft either. Do you know what I mean? And
the naturally big guy.
Yeah, naturally. And I was like convinced he'll never fight at lightweight again. Then when he did, and then I think for me the big thing was seeing him at the presser and seeing him at the weigh-in. You thought, he took a big cut. But I'll be honest, I just thought he wins, but possibly on points now. But yeah,
we spoke about it, didn't we? I'd said for a long time my kind of like big call was that he was going to blow the weight. Where he was going to miss the weights, like, and clearly, like 137, 138. Fuck your time.
He's massive.
Up to 140.
It was huge.
Obviously, he made the weight in the end, and how much that took of him, look, we don't really know. But I remember after the Nakatani fight, he was saying, right, I'm going to move up. Unless I can get the Lomachenko fight, I'm going to move up.
Yeah.
He got the Lomachenko fight, which took ages to make. Finally got it. Then was out of the ring for another year because of all of this. That George Kambosos fight, when you look at kind of the Triller stuff, how he pissed off Top Rank, the whole thing was an absolute...
It couldn't have gone any worse.
It really couldn't. It really couldn't have gone any worse.
He got well paid. He
rematch clause. All of it was just an absolute... That's the only thing that you can say about it. He got paid well. Yeah. But now his stock, say his stock has fallen. It's completely plummeted.
Yeah, I don't think we can count him amongst the lightweights anymore, surely.
No, he's not going to make... because if he doesn't have... if he had a rematch clause and it was like, okay, one more time, you have to go down, win your bouts, a bit of pride or whatever you want to call it, then yeah. But he doesn't have a rematch clause. What's he going to do? Like, go down to 135 and then box Yvonne Mendy or somebody like that and like get himself back in position. It's just not going to happen. So like, I put like a list of lightweights that I'd love to see box each other.
Yeah,
in my opinion, he's not a lightweight.
He's not making lightweight again. I've said it before and got it wrong, but he will not make it again.
Did anybody read the I can't remember who, Corey Erdman, his piece on boxing scene about Lopez the week? That was...
He said he's down to his last 20 grand or something.
He was down to his last $20,000. He had a really... One of the quotes that stuck with me from that was that he has so much pain that when he knocks somebody down, if the referee wasn't there, he'd jump on them and elbow them.
Oh,
and
jeez,
kick
didn't
them
see
and-
this.
And then he was, I think one of the piece ended on him walking out shouting something like "fuck the government" or something like that. And we know the kind of the dynamic of the camp is a little bit. How do we want to
Charged?
put it? A little bit charged, yeah. Everybody's a little bit mad
Yeah.
in there, which, you know, okay, they harnessed it for the Lomachenko fight. It was great, but I kind of always felt that he was going to be somebody who would have a lot of fights, a lot of big fights early in his career, and then kind of burn out a little bit, like a Fernando Vargas
you just
type
about to
guy.
say, yeah.
Like somebody who has lots of big fights, win some, lose some, always give plenty of entertainment, ill-disciplined, and eventually kind of calls time in his career after 27, 28. It's really interesting to see what happens with him now. He's signed a new deal with Top Rank where he's got, I think it's 2 pay-per-view shows in his contract for next year. Who they're going to be against? I mean, well, you'd think that one of them's going to be against Josh Taylor, but based on what we saw this past weekend, you don't want to get him anywhere near Josh Taylor if you're looking to rebuild.
Or even like Prograis or anyone like that. You wouldn't want to.
Nah, neither. But then that's another good. I think Lopez can win world titles again. Because I think he's a tremendous athlete. I think, you know, when you see him from dancing, football, sprint, he's an athlete.
He managed to do that backflip with a pneumo mediastinum, which was unbelievable.
He's but then there again as well, Josh. I think Josh should be like, there's no see that at some point he's going to go up. Josh will go up to welterweight at some point, you imagine soon. So I don't really see that, but like you said, would you first fight back? You wouldn't fancy putting Lopez in with a Regis or all that, would you? But there'll be big fights in there for him. But if the pay-per-view fights, they're going to have to be the big names. So
you'd think that obviously Top Rank are very good at guiding fighters, and you'd think that they have got a lot of 140 pounders as well. You think, but if he moves up
Even
and
like
say he
Zepeda.
boxes, that's just what I was going to say.
Even
If he
Zepeda.
boxes as Zepeda,
Yeah.
All right, Zepeda does blow hot
some
and cold.
belts on it, though,
Sometimes
doesn't
it's unbelievable, and other times it's a bit lethargic. But if you get the best version of Zepeda showing up and say his first fight at 140, Lopez can't move up to 140 and box a Hank Lundy or somebody like that, having kind
Not
of
on pay-per-view.
the takeover and the blah blah blah. No, we're going to fight Hank Lundy or Robbie Davis Jr. are going to go over there and box him. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with him. Does anybody know what happened to Joey Gamache?
No, see, that's a weird. Apparently, he didn't want to do the camp. Where was it they did the camp? Wherever it was, Joey Gamache didn't want to do that, which I find surprising. And I think it really showed.
There's got to be more to it.
Yeah, I think it really showed in the performance that he was missing.
Kind of like smacks of somebody, a really experienced boxing guy.
Going, I don't want any more.
I'm not part of it. Yeah,
who's
I
just
don't want
walked
any more
away,
of that.
because I remember we all know his kind of background in the sport, but I remember just seeing him quite a bit at Seoul and Nordic fight nights, because he's got Otto Allen and you're just killing time during the day, and I sat down with him like 2 or 3 times and we're just talking about all sorts of things, and he's just a very interesting bloke and a really nice bloke. And I just thought that must be what had happened. Like, I'm not his mate, like I don't claim to know him, but you just get a vibe off someone, don't you, sometimes?
Yeah.
And I just thought he's definitely the kind of person where he would just think,
I'm not
this
part of
Don't
this
need
badness.
this.
I'm not
Don't
doing
need
this anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, remember that kind of like when he left it late in the day, but the Leon Spinks, Muhammad Ali rematch, and George Benton just walked out the arena halfway through, didn't he? Because he was told you got to share corner duties with someone else, and he just thought, nah, fuck this.
I'm George Benton.
So he's probably just, that's an extreme example, but he's obviously looked at it and just thought, I won't be part of this.
Yeah.
And that was it. I say obviously, like I said, it's a guess, but I'd be pretty confident that's what happened.
You know, you mentioned that what he said about his, you know, the pain that he has. I don't know if I'm imagining this, but there was a good whatever the build-up show was before the Lomachenko fight, and he was talking about being depressed and stuff like that at that
he had
age.
like a massive fallout, didn't he, with his... that was around the Nakatani fight. He had a big fallout with his new wife.
Yeah,
I think
they're not together anymore. Because when I interviewed him at it was Crawford Khan, and he boxed. I always forget the name. Who's the Icelandic or Finnish former European?
Edis Tatley.
And he stopped him that night.
Yeah.
But his missus was there at the time, and they were very loved up. In fact, that after that fight, I even think they went directly from New York and got married on like the Tuesday or something. So it was big, you know. Yeah. And then if they've broken up and gone their separate ways, he's a very young guy, and he's got all this happening. His trainer's gone, and his dad's there. We all can see the dad, but we wonder what the relationship's like behind closed doors. You can just imagine there's a lot going on for him.
Well, that was around that Nakatani fight is when, so there was problems with the wife and the family in Vegas. So there was a lot of kind of turmoil in his personal life around that fight, which he kind of put down to his lackluster performance against Nakatani. And then, yeah, it's seemingly gone on from there. And he said he has a lot of rage, and that's not healthy for a man of his age, particularly in such a sport like boxing, where you really need, okay, you can have the rage and you can, as long as you harness it, but as soon as you start losing control, and then you have somebody like a Joey Gamache who maybe was the kind of the glue that was holding it together for that Lomachenko camp, or by all accounts he did wonders in the camp. You saw in the night in the performance. To lose that, and then the dad he's an interesting fella. We only have to see kind of his reaction to it. You kind of look at that and you think, okay, well, where's that go? Don't get me wrong, I didn't think it was going to go wrong against Kambosos, but I did think that there was going to be something somewhere along the line where something would happen and something would go wrong. Andy, we spoke several times about fighters having to be honest with themselves, be real with themselves after the fight. Teofimo Lopez thought he won the fight 10-2.
11-2 actually.
11-2.
Yeah, that was his post-fight interview was. Yeah, I'm never too critical of what fighters say in post-fight interviews, because they've just been fighting, and they're given a very short space of a time to try and calm down and say something sensible. I don't think it's reasonable a lot of the time, actually, but I shouldn't really say that given what I do, but. It was a disaster, his post-fight interview. Like, it couldn't really have gone any worse. It couldn't have gone any worse. But I do feel like you can let him off that, so long as he does go back and watch it and realise what actually happened. But the chaos that seems to be around him, it's unsustainable. Like, it's completely exhausting. Like, I think it's not the same, but I think back to like chaotic periods during my own life and how much harder I made things for myself than they needed to be. And I'm not an elite level athlete. I just needed to get to an office by a certain time every day, and I found that hard enough. So you're trying to do what you were doing and what elite level boxing, and you've got all of that surrounding you. Either you've got to sort it out, which is going to be chaotic and emotional in itself and involve some enormous decisions, or you accept it and you have a short career. It's one of those two things, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see what happens from now, because I mean his dad's interview afterwards was terrible. I mean, I'm not one for defending Eddie Hearn, but like some of the stuff that he was saying about Eddie and Matchroom, Top Rank love us, and we went over here and DAZN did this. So Eddie spoke to Andy and he said he'd had all of these crazy messages off Teofimo Lopez in the middle of the night and stuff, talking about, you robbed us, I can't believe you did this to us. And Teofimo Lopez Jr. and his dad, they're obviously very, very close. If that's what he's got in his ear now, after all of this stuff, don't worry, champ, we won the fight 10-2. It's just dangerous. Then that's just going to add fuel to the fire.
Because what you need is, like, people are compared him to Angel Garcia, but he's nothing like Angel Garcia. Because Angel Garcia, you kind of got the feeling that he just thought, right, well, I'm going to go and do this because I think it'll take the heat off my boy. If people think I'm an egomaniac, I don't really fucking care because I'm only interested in him. And you're like, Joe's done that. Joe did that for Scott Wigg against Wolfram.
Yeah, he's done some mad.
People think, it's because Joe wants it all to be about Joe. It's not that. He just thought, I can't have Quigg locking verbal horns with Frampton because he'll lose.
He'll come off second best.
So I'll do that. I remember after the open workouts that fight week, Joe just came over to, I think it was Eddie or whoever it was, and just said, right, at the press conference on Thursday, I'm just going to get stuck into Barry. I haven't really decided how I'm going to do it yet, but I'll go for Barry. You go for Shane, and we'll all just... And it was kind of... And I just thought, this is ace. But that's what Joe does. That's what Angel Garcia does, I think. Whereas Lopez Senior, I think, is...
It's not that considered.
It's not that thought through.
No.
I don't know, you might remember, but the amount of times I've been at Vegas fight weeks and they're just knocking about. This is back in the day, even before he was really famous, whatever. And the old man was just always fuming about anything. It didn't matter what it was.
The press always hear him shouting.
And it didn't matter what it was. Where's Bob? I want to speak to her. And it's like, mate, and like you say, he's got that. If Junior's got that in his ear at all times, which he basically has, it takes a lot, I think, to be able to sort of separate what is mad and what isn't. And it's a funny old double act. And they were thick as thieves, clearly. And they used to just knock about. And the old man would be fuming. It'd be great for content, basically. But when it boils down to it, is it sustainable? Probably
No,
not.
It's just not, is it? I don't think.
All right, moving on. I think we need to get James Cook in the camp. But anyway,
Get James Cook in.
get James Cook in there. Moving on, of course, Sunday night. Last night it was crazy, absolutely in pieces over here. Gervonta Davis retained his WBA something or other belt, a version of the title against Isaac Cruz.
Are we going Isak, not Isaac?
Isaac, what is that?
I like Isak, but I've never heard that. It's like, remember when Frampton boxed Molina? People called him Molina. And I was like, where'd that come from? So Isak, I love Isak.
I mean, away from the world of boxing, Colin Powell was always my
So Colin Cruz.
Okay, we're gonna go with Isak because that's what Leonard Ellaby said in the press conference before he told Eddie Hearn to go fuck himself. Every said, which was actually our question. So there we go. Yeah,
maybe Leonard Ellaby could decide whether it's Dillian or Dylan.
There we go. Gervonta Davis. I think it's fair to say that everybody expected that fight to end in knockout. It didn't. Dec, your thoughts on the fight?
I thought it was maybe another one where Davis was expecting to turn up and win by knockout as well. I think it's a fight that is going to age well because I think that guy, that Cruz, is a legit. He's 23 years old. He's legit. And in 5 years, 6 years, you'll look back and it'll be like, oh, Davis beat him on points. That was a good win. And I was quite underwhelmed by the performance, I guess, and he got hit quite a lot, actually. But you look at Cruz, some of the stuff Cruz was doing was quality. He's a quality fighter. And also, they talk about, 5 weeks notice or whatever, but after what happened with Romero, and you sort of think, you usually then give the impetus to the sort of person who steps in. But at the same time, it's hard for Davis as well to then reset and sort of re-prepare. And he's probably looking 23-year-old kid, box no one. This is easy work. You know what he's like. But I thought it was good. I thought it was a good performance, entertaining fight. Again, it's sort of, I don't know whether his stock, it didn't rise like it did in the sort of Santa Cruz win or something like that. But I thought it was it was just another good fight, and it was almost like it's there. You think about all this stuff that happened this weekend. It's sort of hard to put it all together. But I think he's doing what he's doing, Davis. I just worry that we might never see him in the big ones because he's just based on the people he's got around him and who run the show. I'm worried about that.
And what did you make of Gervonta Davis' performance?
I'll be honest, I need to watch it yet. It was early hours. I was in the gym, really poor. But
you should have got here early and watched it in the studio with Andy Clarke.
I was gonna, you know what I was going to do, lads? I was going to lie and sort of pick bits and wing it.
Be like, he boxed well behind the jab. You say that very well.
But no, what I did. What that Cruz, like you said, I do think that he's an handful. He's an handful. Little bits of him.
Yeah.
But I think that's more worried. We said it earlier. I just worry what fights we're going to see in Davis. I think, when Leonard Ellaby, when they start saying, "Oh, his fights are events," but are they really? Are they really events? Do you know what I mean? Are you getting? I don't know if he is he getting those kind of viewing figures to suggest
he's doing good numbers at the gates. Certainly for
and pay-per-view not bad either.
Yeah, not bad considering what he's in the early stages of kind of billing him as a pay-per-view fighter, but as an attraction. I mean, I'm not massively up to date with American pop culture, but you've got like a lot of sportsmen there who are big names, and they are kind of building an event. We've seen it over here. Eddie Hearn will say, you get event fans. A lot of these big Joshua fights, they're not there for the opponent. They don't care.
Yeah, of course. A guy's there with his girlfriend. They've got half and half scarves on. They've got an AJ cap on. That's it. And I don't know if that's what you sort of going down all the saying that they're at with Gervonta Davis. But I just think it'd just be a massive shame we don't see him in those fights. I think he is a special talent. And I remember it was the Smiths who told me years ago. He was in Liverpool, Mayweather, and this was away from the cameras and, doing the talk. And there was on about Davis and Mayweather away from it all. And you imagine he doesn't give praise out to Will. He says how hard he is. It's unbelievable how hard he is. Yeah. And he's one of the biggest punches in the game, you'd think. But I didn't know what kind of shots he landed against Cruz last night, and he took him. But
big shot, and Cruz was taking the heat off him well. Like he boxed really well. He's very compact and small, and the way he moves his head.
He's got that thick neck.
Yes,
and shoulders and back. He's built to take a shot. Absolutely.
I think for me, Davis may be the most exciting. There's not another fighter really that gets my juices flowing like Davis does, and think, but then it's sort of he needs the opponent, he needs a dance partner for that. But I think he's he's a big puncher, but he didn't really land anything of note in the fight.
He in the middle rounds. So Cruz had a really good start to the fight, didn't he? He came out,
but that's a bang on point, and I think that tells the story of Davis going maybe not expecting that. And it's a bit like Yarde after first fight. He wanted to just sort of he couldn't get a good start, and Cruz did.
I think we kind of knew what Cruz was going to do. He comes forward, he lets the hands go, kind of head down and away we go sort of thing. And I think Davis, up until sort of we don't know when the actual hand injury was. The general consensus, Davis said it was in the 6th round, but they're obviously going to fucking say it's as early as possible. Yeah, we came in with it. But I think it's sort of 7-8 rounds. He was just starting to get on top. And Davis, I love watching him box. We talk about his punching power, the way he picks his shots, his speed, but he's also very, very calm in there. You'd never really see him rushed, but he was rushed in the first few rounds of that fight. Yeah. And then just when Cruz started to slow down, Davis started to pick his shots and land, and then that's when the hand went. But I think he was just starting to get to him. He froze him with a right hook, I think, in the 6th or 7th round. And that was the only time, really, in the 12 rounds that we saw Cruz get hurt. As we mentioned, he is built to take a shot. And he was... I mean, the first round he came out and he was letting his hands go. But we discussed this when Andy Clarke came in here to watch the fight before we got started, leaning over the front foot and you're just thinking against Gervonta Davis, you're asking to get hit with one of them.
He overcooked the hook so many times that in the end, his target wasn't even facing Davis half the time because he was overcooking him. And he's got his back to him almost, and he's like, "How are you supposed to land there?"
There was that one time where Davis probably got hit by the best shot that Cruz landed was a left hook, where Davis was actually turned around, and then as he went to turn back, Cruz threw another left hook and landed flush. So I actually thought, I expected a competitive fight. I thought Cruz would come, give it a go, make Davis work, and then eventually get taken out around 8 or 9. And I think he was potentially on the way to doing that, Davis, because he was just starting to break him down. Cruz was just slowing down a little bit. Then the hand went, and it kind of, I don't want to say allowed Cruz back into the fight and not give him the credit for being in the fight and forcing the action, but it did kind of open the door a little bit. Davis not being able to throw that big left hand, essentially boxing one-handed for the last 3 rounds, just allowed Cruz to tighten things up a little bit more on the cards and also have success late in the fight. But I thought that was, when you consider the fights that Davis has had since that Pedraza fight, and I don't believe he's matched as softly as people make out. People make out that he is fighting absolute nobodies. He's not. But that's the fight that he's going to learn from. If you're looking back at, the Barrios fight, for different reasons, but since that Pedraza fight, I think that was the best test for him against Isaac Cruz last night.
Yeah, it was a good, I enjoyed watching it. And Cruz is, I love fighters like that because he's just got really good basics and really good temperament, and as you say, he came in at relatively short notice and he did his thing and he did it really, really well, and he will go on to do well because it's all there. There's not an easy night to be had against someone like him. I just remember how kind of excited I was about Davis when he beat Pedraza, and then when we saw him over in the UK, because you got that feeling, didn't you, when he came to the UK and Mayweather was here, and you're thinking, wow, like this is... Like we're seeing someone at the beginning here who, like in years gone by, the amount of people who were actually at the Copper Box will multiply by 10. Like Loma and Usyk in WSB. All of a sudden, everyone you've ever fucking met at boxing was at that fight. And I thought it'd be one of them, and it just hasn't quite happened, has it? Because, like you say, it's not like the people he's faced have been knockover jobs or anything like that, but the big fights that you were talking about, they're just not happening, and you're just worried that they're not going to, for the same reason that we were worrying that it might not really happen for Crawford at welterweight, because he makes good in a way. Because they make good money, and do they really need to do it? And that's the problem.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
You've got Kambosos there now with these belts and stuff like that, but you even really sense that. Look, obviously Haney come out of his fight with Kambosos against JoJo Diaz. I want the undisputed, or whatever you want to call it, against George Kambosos. You never really get that impression from Davis.
No.
He's not really asked about belts because, as they say, belts don't pay the bills. It's about the pay-per-views and the money that you can generate. He does do a brilliant gate for a man of his size and still certainly relative inexperience as a pay-per-view attraction. He does do big numbers, but you never think that he's going to be tempted by a belt. You never think he's going to be, oh well, I can win all the belts. Well, I don't give a fuck about
It's funny though, because I think he rises. I think he rises to the occasion massively, and I think that's why that Pedraza fight he was so good, and that was for a proper belt and that. And then
it's the only proper belt he's won.
Yeah, but the performance was so good, and I think that was the problem, that he didn't really rise to the occasion. I think he needs a bit of fear factor. He needs something to really get his juices flowing. Interesting sort of, I don't know, his sort of journey, because what is he now, 27, 28? He's not a kid anymore. He was a kid. He was like the young one in that Mayweather promotion stable. He's talking about he's given up drinking before the Barrios fight, I think.
Yeah.
He's just growing up a bit, and he's coming of age a bit. And I think interested to see like what you said, Andy, that like Haney says, where are the fights? At what point does Davis say that? Because it hasn't always been a smooth relationship with, definitely not with Floyd, and I don't know about with Ellaby, but you get the impression there could be a moment where he's just like, what is it like? Why am I not?
Where's the career defining?
Why am I not fighting Garcia? Why can't you get that guy for me? Why can't we get him here? Why can't we pay him to do this? Like when you're 23 and you're the upstart kid in that sort of team, and Floyd's still boxing and everything else, and you're just happy to be there, is one thing. But now he's the main guy in Mayweather Promotions, really. Like there has to be a point where he goes, right, let's sort this out. Or is he just happy with what he's doing, getting $1 million? Because I think he speaks about money a lot. I think $1 million, he's not going to be happy with that for much longer.
Well, I think he probably gets paid more than $1 million. I think that's probably his.
That's his purse.
That's his purse for the commission.
Yeah.
I think he probably gets a little bit more than that when it's all said and done after the fact. But yeah, where's the career-defining fight? I mean, by all accounts, the Garcia fight was offered and accepted, and then Garcia was going to go and box Manny Pacquiao, and of course ended up not boxing either of them. So I mean, you can obviously read what you like into that. We never know the actual full story of what's going to happen. I think Michel Rivera's probably going to be like one of the leading candidates for his next fight if he does decide it. Like, wait, the Andy's face, I'll throw over to you.
It's just no good, that is it?
Yeah, but you just want something bigger, don't we?
Yeah, that sounds terrible on Rivera, but that's no good.
There's so many fights, aren't there? There's so many people I'd like to see him again.
I know what you're thinking there, and again, it's no disrespect to Rivera, but then if you've got Leonard Ellaby in the press conference saying how Tank's a star and that, it's not like, we want to see him in these super fights. We want to see him in the super fights. I think you mentioned a good point, because my worry was always Tank, which you could say about any boxer, but you know, he's given up the drinking and stuff like that. He's grew up a bit because he used to turn into a little barrel, didn't he? Do you know what I mean? And you thought, that's obviously going to slow down. You're worried about things, you know, outside of the ring and stuff, being where he's from. So I think, you know, with that maturity, hopefully it has clicked like that, and he's thinking, no, it's a short career. That's what's then hopefully going to trigger him to come, no, I want these fights. I want these fights to happen. And
I know he can get, say $1 million or whatever, $2 million for a boxer, an Isaac Cruz or a Rivera or somebody like that. You can't tell me that it's not going to be a lot more money for him to box a Devin Haney, a Teofimo Lopez, a Ryan Garcia. That Ryan Garcia, we've mentioned that Ryan Garcia fight would be massive, massive. Huge. Like that is a fight for the digital age, isn't it? That's a big. Yeah. You can imagine that on social media. We saw it took over the world for a little part. It was certainly the boxing world when they were doing the Mike Tyson podcast and what have you, but. Yeah, there surely comes a point where he goes, okay, yeah, I can get $1.5 million or $2 million or whatever it is to box a Cruz or a Rivera. But I could get $5 million if I box him, or I can get 6-7 if I box him, but if
they can just do it once, then if it's a really good fight, they can have a
yeah. I don't think it's not like they don't rate him either.
No, exactly. Like this is the thing. Like people will be watching this, I'm sure now.
Like a big puncher at 140 pounds. Like I don't think they're trying to protect him in any way. That's why it's a bit weird.
It's just it's like those calculated risks and stuff, and I feel like I'm a big fan of Gervonta Davis. I think it's like you, Deck. He really gets me going. He's one of those fighters who anything can happen at any time, and he's got that swag and that style, and I really like that. But people will kind of look at this discussion that we're having here and go, oh, but Tank does this. And look, we're not slagging him off. If anything, it comes from a place of just wanting to see more from him, because he is such a talent, such a good fighter that you want to see him against these. I personally, the one fighter I'd give the best chance of beating him at 135 is Lomachenko. Yeah. But having said that, I would pick Davis to beat all of the other 135ers, and gun to my head, I'd pick him to beat Lomachenko. I would.
Yeah, I think what I like about Davis is we were talking about the chaos that's around Lopez at the minute, and the maybe steriles a bit of a harsh word, but the kind of sterility that's maybe kind of around Haney from a personality point of view and a branding point of view. And then you've got Davis, who there was some chaos there back in the day.
There was
some chaos.
Him and Adrian Broner
around.
around.
Seems to have come through that and learned from it, but it's still there in a good way.
Yeah.
In the if those eyes need to go dark and something needs to happen in that ring, he can do it, and that will never not be in it, will it? If that's there, that's always there. And I'm not saying it's not there for Haney. He's a professional boxer, and he turned pro when he was a kid, basically a child almost. But that's why I like Davis, because and that's why I love Josh Taylor, because he's the same. It doesn't matter where you're from. You can point at different backgrounds, but it's either in you or it's not. And with some of them, it's just kind of
flip the switch like that.
It's just visibly there that when it comes time to do whatever it takes to win, they can.
Do you know, I think one of the reasons for that is Calvin Ford's still there.
Yeah.
So he's still
that guy.
He's still that 10-year-old kid or whatever he is that walked in that Upton Boxing Club, and he's still that. They still have that connection. No matter what happens everywhere else, they're still those boys and they've gone through it all together, and he's never going to lose that.
Cutty.
Yeah, Cutty, the real Cutty.
The real Cutty.
The real Cutty.
Right, we're really running out of time, so we have to move on, because of course it wouldn't be right to talk about the lightweights and not talk about this coming weekend, the forgotten man of the lightweight division. We're going to come to you first, not you, Anthony. We're going to come to you first,
still remembered,
and talk about your ex-opponent, a certain Vasiliy Lomachenko, returns to the ring against Richard Commey this weekend. First question, of course, as somebody who boxed him, how good is he?
He's that good. I say it all the time, and I think, please don't think I'm suggesting the result would have been different. I wish that I would have looked to have, and this one we've seen him deal with that was when people try to put on him, it also turns bull matador thing, but I think at least I would have had some success no matter what's on the summit earlier. But what he's that good in the sense where it's nothing you don't know, but the distance, the reading a fight. I remember, I've said it before, but I remember speaking to Russ Abner years ago before there was any chance of, ever fighting him or out like that. And it was he was a fighter to win, and Russ was he still is, he's a big part in his camp. And he said, when this guy Lomachenko, he says, is the best I've seen. He says, it's like I'm seeing fighters, and he's been around fights, so he said, he's not one move ahead. He's thinking moves 2, 3, 4 moves ahead where he's going, and you can watch it. And it wasn't Russ being smart, but he was like, a lot of people won't even be able to see it, but you're watching things and you're thinking, he set that up, and I knew that. And when I was face first, I remember thinking, I know exactly how he's just done that to me. But there again, at the same time, maybe I wasn't there as much as I thought, because I remember going in the back, and I didn't think, I was going, I can't understand why people asking me, was he all right? Wasn't a big knockout, was it? And people were like, it was pretty bad, I don't forget it at the Euros. I said it there. I don't know if everyone else was thinking, going, what? And he went, do you know, was it a bad stoppage? The way people going on? And he went, that was pretty bad, And then I seen it on the phone. I was going, and I read like these messages
that's
on the phone.
Yeah.
Oh, you okay? You okay? I was thinking, and that's when I watched it back.
Fascinating that though, because we were talking about this the other week. You get different kinds of stoppages or knockouts. You get ones where your body won't work, but your head's clear. And
that's exactly what it was. I was actually thinking
where your head's gone, but somehow their bodies, they're on their feet, but they're gone. You can see it in their eyes. But with yours,
the referee was brilliant. He went, I knew you was okay, like of how you were speaking to me. But I remember being on the floor face first, thinking, I look really stupid here. I couldn't get up.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, get up here, look at. Do you know what I mean? And I just couldn't. But regarding the fight, I think I remember as well. It's Comey's I think it's disrespectful to say a very live opponent.
Very good,
because he's very good, and a big, strong lightweight as well. And you forget before Lopez out, some of the wins against Shafikov and stuff like that, brilliant wins. Lopez, he just walked onto an absolute bomb. It was an overhand right, wasn't it? And he just that was it.
Like Robert Easter hit him.
Yes. Comey's a very, very good fighter. You just feel the way he's going to try and beat Lomachenko. You feel that it's going to be made a little bit to look like Lomachenko's going to look very good doing it. Again, like I just said before, bull matador, tap, and then angles, whipping the shots, and It's going to be hard for Richard Commey, but he's one of the top lightweights in the world. It's a top lightweight fight.
He looks like he's got the bit between his teeth. That Nakatani performance. If there was significant decline, then that would have probably shown us a little bit of it. I mean, Nakatani quite limited, but he's a big lump at lightweight, and Lomachenko set about him really. Though he kind of had it between. He wanted a point to prove. He wanted to stop Nakatani because Lopez didn't stop him, and I want to send out a message that I'm still here. And you kind of sense that from him, even from his amateur career. Okay, he loses once, I beat you twice, and he wants to come back. And I feel like he's in that kind of nasty mode, Lomachenko, and I feel like this is a good fight for him to show that.
Yeah, he looked like there were suggestions that he's slowing down. There's suggestions that he can't handle real big lightweights. He's gone up too far, bitten off more than he can chew. Commey will be another good sort of barometer of that because he's big and powerful and long and rangy. But yeah, I'm the same as you, Ant. I think he's just gonna. It's almost like he's not made for him, but it's a style that he can look good against if he's the Lomachenko of old. And if he's not, he won't.
Yeah, if he's a Lomachenko of old, which we think he is going off the last fight, you can't see anything other than a brilliant performance. It's mad, you know. Like, so I would like Commey's one of the top lights in the world. Box down the road, and he's been at York, huh?
He won.
But
his Commonwealth title.
Still managed by Mickey Amumi.
He
used to live in Essex.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I think it's a good. I think it's a real good. It's almost like you're right. He's one of the best lightweights in the world. So it's good that Lomachenko's back in that sort of a fight. But I still worry that even though of the name he's got, he's kind of who needs him club at the moment.
Oh, he's
crazy, isn't it?
The chairman of it.
It's crazy.
President of that, isn't it?
It was great. What about the Four Kings that was going on not that long ago? And Lomachenko won, isn't it?
The best quote of the last couple of weeks or whatever is George Kambosos post-fight. Is like, if they're the Four Kings, I must be the Emperor. That's a fucking brilliant line. We're going to have to wrap up. So Andy, I'm going to leave the last word with you on Vasiliy Lomachenko. I know you're an enormous fan of him, as pretty much everybody is. I think he gets the job done in style this weekend, puts himself back in the mix at 135 pounds. Not that he's out of the mix, but you know what I mean.
I do. I think against Nakatani, good performance. I think there's still. I know he had nearly 400 amateur fights, and there's loads of training camps and the toll on the body through starting so young and all of that stuff. But I still think he's got something left, and there's definitely a lot of desire left there still. Like if this was it for him, say he wins against Commey and then the fights don't really happen and it all petered. He won't have that. He can't have that. I think he still feels like he's got plenty left to do, and I still think he's the best at 135.
Well, you've stepped on the final question, so we'll start with Mr. Anthony Crolla. We're going to go around. I want your top 3 lightweights in order.
Yeah.
So no Lopez, no Teofimo.
No Lopez. Lopez is checked out.
Who I think, I mean, listen, again, for me, Lomachenko will be the best lightweight. So it's cruel to not have Kambosos after what he's done. He's the man who beat the man. But Lomachenko, is it bad I don't put Kambosos in this 4? You've got to put him in, ain't you?
Okay, should we do a 5? Should we do a 5? But we have to be quick because he's waiting for us to get out.
Right. Lomachenko number 1.
Yep.
Haney 2, Kambosos 3, Garcia 4.
5.
Oh wow, I forgot about Gervonta Davis.
Tank.
Oh no, I'm putting Gervonta Davis 2. So yeah.
So you got Lomachenko, Davis, Haney,
Kambosos,
Garcia. Deck.
Tank, Lomachenko, Kambosos, Garcia, Haney.
I'd go Lomachenko, Tank, Kambosos, Garcia, Haney.
So mine's but I'm going to pay the respect to I pay the respect to George Kambosos as the man who just beat the man. And even though I think if they all kind of fought each other, I wouldn't say he necessarily comes out at 1. But my ranking is going to be kind of based, I guess, on what have you done for me lately a little bit more than head-to-heads. So I'm going to go Kambosos 1. Fucking hell. I'm going to go Kambosos 1. See, that's ridiculous because then you'd probably have to go Haney 2 because he's got the belt. But I think both Davis and Lomachenko beat Haney. It
depends how you do it. If I was to do it with my rankings compiler head on, then I would have Kambosos number 1.
You've got
okay, right. Well, I'm going to forget all of that. I'm going to go Davis 1, Lomachenko 2, Kambosos 3, Haney 4, Garcia 5, but I think Garcia beats Haney if they box. But anyway, that's enough from us this week on the Boxing Social Podcast. Thanks very much, as always, for stopping by with myself, former lightweight champion of the world, Anthony Crolla, gun for hire, Declan Taylor. Remember, any job offers, put it in the comments. And Andy Clarke, of course, of Boxing Social. From me, Rob Tebbutt, from our esteemed panel of guests. Thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll catch you soon.